The global government space exploration budgets total to be about 70 billion versus the beauty industry, which is about 530 billion. Why do we care more for female vanity than death by asteroid? So with this thought, this is the whole technique of people just mentioning how much is spent on one thing, and then they throw out this other number, and then they try to make some take or some call on what that means about what we care about as a society. It's a nebulous we, what we care about. Because if you, in general, are already objecting to the discrepancy of spending on those two things, aren't you part of the we? Like, what are you personally doing about changing the spending on that thing? And again, you're objecting to this, just like right now. I personally would rather we spend more money in total on space exploration than on the beauty industry. So I wouldn't be able to say we because I clearly don't care about that and I am part of the we. So I'd have to say they. Why do they? Why do certain people? Why do most of society and things like that, to be more specific? And this is some of the semantics, but hey, this is my video. This is my presentation. We're going to get the semantics on this. Okay, so the next part of this is what I wrote. I wrote global government space exploration budgets versus the beauty industry. Now, those two terms, why are these two things related? Technically, global space budgets are pro all humans, but then when you talk about something like NASA, that is specifically to the United States of America. Oh man, again, with SpaceX, we'll get to the SpaceX. I'm not getting to SpaceX now. I'm probably going to talk about it a little bit later on. But when you're talking about with SpaceX, they just had the splashdown of the Dragon capsule that took up the two astronauts. I'm going to pause and look at these people's names because their names need to be out here. It was astronauts Robert Benken and Douglas Hurley. I remember just watching the live stream of the event when the rocket took off and they actually got to the space station. They got into the space station, just happened in the background. And then this weekend I watched the splashdown, and it's another amazing stuff. These people were in space. Those humans literally in space. And it's the next mission is going to have, I think, a Japanese astronaut and somebody else. So this is the International Space Station. There are some questions about the International Space Station because of the funding that was happening in NASA and the United States of America and the different changes that they decided to work with the Russian Federation. And due to the launch from Russia, they had to position the space station in a certain location that actually is less optimum to the initial plans that they had in the space station. And this is paraphrasing something that I actually just heard from, I think it was a Bill Whittle channel, channel's video about that. I might try to remember to actually put a link for that somewhere below. But anyway, so there is something with that, and it's more of, I think, a human kind of interest, but it's still something relatively new and something that we don't necessarily, I think, see the importance of. And I think this is not saying the we, the grand we in the sense counting me, I still don't really understand the importance of it, but in general, society does not really see the direct contact between these things. There's lots of things that have been developed in parts of trying to get to the space program. There's this one thing is, NASA was using pencils, and then they spent all this money to actually develop a pen. It was like billions of dollars, and the Russians just kept using a pencil. And no, actually, there was issues with the graphite breaking off and things like this, and somebody developed that on their own. I think it was more like a private industry, and then they decided to sell the pen to NASA. But things like this happen when they're developing things for the whole space program that end up being used in our regular everyday life. Things like Tang, like powdered drinks. There's other things that are developed in the whole spaceflight effort. Now, how much is developed in the beauty industry that ends up being used in regular life? Are there some people who might be thinking maybe there's some astronaut sometime, there's some kid being born right now, male or female, that is attracted to either male or female now that they have male cup, which I like to call male cup, which is like the makeup for men. They have the metrosexuals. That was a thing for a while. I haven't heard that term that much anymore. But both men and women wear makeup in the beauty industry and things like this. And the beauty industry is very wide. How specific is the space industry? When you're talking about space industry, you're speaking about specifically rockets and the International Space Station and the number of people involved hired in that versus the beauty industry. With the beauty industry, are we counting even the people like in China with the Uyghur camps, with the camps of the Uyghur Muslims who are shaving their heads off? Are you talking about the people in India who go to different temples and have their heads shaved off, and then the hairs are actually sent to the United States of America, and then the people with the hair-hatted hooligans wear them as weaves and wigs and things like that? Is that all part of it, or is it just things like in actual like ambergris and is it ambergris or whatever it is for the actual perfumes and things like this? What is involved with the beauty industry? Is it plastic surgery and things like that? What is beauty industry, and how much of those effects actually go in? Now, another thing with these is when I say beauty industry, that is mostly private sector versus the global government space exploration budgets. That is a budget. Now, a budget is ahead of time. We're going to spend this much money on this thing. Now, once the amount of money is allocated towards one thing in a government budget, first of all, that is taxed from private sector in general. Then it's put and said, we're going to spend this much on this. And people lobby for that thing ahead of time. Now, even if that money isn't spent in the best way, they find ways to spend that money to keep the budget going. Whereas the beauty industry, there's probably a lot of turnover of people trying to enter the industry and going off. So the things that are working in the beauty industry are probably the most profitable ways of doing it. Now, when you're talking about government space exploration, if you actually had it in private sector, would it be different? Because as I just mentioned with the SpaceX thing, that is a private government partnership. You still have to have licenses, and they're working in partnership with NASA and different international space agencies. So there's these things that you have to consider with a term like this. Am I comparing apples to apples? Is it apples to oranges? Is it apples to orchards? Is it like an entirely different thing in this one, where the beauty industry is actually a forest, and then the global government space agency is more like a computer? Where that's something not even related. We're talking about one object that's very specific and very specialized versus a forest that has been growing over a much longer time, is much more diverse, has different aspects involved in it that are not, it's not just the trees, it's all other things, yet everything that you look at when you look at a computer is just directly, everything working directly to the actual computer. So there's these kind of things. The global government space exploration budgets has very specific goals. The beauty industry is more nebulous and changes. Some parts of the forest or a river or some things like this. Some parts might just be grass. Some parts are just mostly trees. So there's that kind of diversity. The animals in the forest, are those part of the forest? Whereas if a bug got into the computer, a virus, even just a digital virus, that wouldn't be part of the actual computer. So there is that to talk about. Now, with the whole thing with the female vanity versus death by asteroid, is the beauty industry really female vanity? And I think I might have started this thought earlier and then cut off, and we'd come back to it. There might be some inspirations where somebody, a male or female, a man or a boy or girl somewhere right now might be born and then see some beautiful woman or man wearing the makeup, and that be someone that attracts them, and then they get driven off, like, I want to supply and spend time with this person. And they have shown that people, at least when it comes with men, that's the thing I've seen in the stats, men seem to earn at least 10 times more than on average than a man who's single. Now, this could be more because you have a family and you're counting on more people, but you just have that drive. Some of these things, I think a lot of push for what men do is to try to be, you have to be the one to create the resources, to initiate, and in order to do that, you normally have to be in a situation where you're admirable to your potential mate. So they have that situation where you're getting those resources. So somebody might be like, in order to do this, in order to get this woman, to get a woman I would like to have my kids and spend for those kids, I'm going to create the best new space program ever. And that could be in part due to this woman being very masterful in her use of this special kind of makeup or this special perfume or this kind of weave or some kind of perfume or some shampoo in her. There could be things where the beauty industry plays a part in inspiring this man to chase after this female and provide for her. To that could be some kind of related thing in that. I don't know. So is it necessarily female vanity? Is that 100%? When I said death by asteroid here, asteroid is a different term, but when it comes into the actual atmosphere, it's called a meteor, a meteorite, or things like that. So already by calling it asteroid wasn't quite accurate, but you hear that and like, oh, that kind of makes sense. But no, and these are the things that just shows that some of these things are mentioned. But let's say I got my preference, and somehow we, the world, we somehow had some change of mind or change of priorities somehow, that whatever processes are actually spent in global government space budgets, that somehow changed to 530 billion, and the amount the private sector or whatever was using in the beauty industry, all those different aspects, dropped to 70 billion. How much would that change? Let's say that happened by end of year. How much would that change in 5 years? Would we now be able to actually prevent death by asteroid or death by meteor? No, I don't think we necessarily would, because for all we know, there could be some comet somewhere out in a light year away that we've never seen. I think we have some kind of understanding of how long comets could possibly spend in actual orbit around our system. But for all we know, there could be something that came in, was launched out of a different solar system somewhere, and then now is coming to our system, and this is the first time it's coming in from the Oort cloud or something, knocks something in the Oort cloud, and that thing, the Oort cloud, comes in, and it somehow gets sucked in by Jupiter, and then some explosion happens in Jupiter, some kind of reaction of what happens, and then that somehow knocks some piece out from Jupiter, from the supposed diamond core of Jupiter, flies out to the asteroid belt, and dislodges something from the asteroid belt, and that flies towards the sun being pushed in, and the Earth just happens to be on an orbit that's just going to come into contact with that thing, and that thing's going to smash into Earth. That could already be something that's set, that's going to happen 10 years from now. Now, would that $530 billion be able to be enough for us to actually find that and discover that and prevent it? Probably not prevent it, but maybe have a settlement on the moon, maybe have an ark, maybe build some kind of underground bunker to actually change these things. There already are some places where there are like kind of arks where people are collecting the different genes and seeds and things like that, where if something needed to be reset somehow. And there's all these amazing things that we can do. And that's just a thought that I had. And another related thought with this is when people talk about things like with that SpaceX thing. I watch that and I see the hundreds of thousands of people that were live streaming this and see the reaction people have, just how amazeballs that thing is. Do you still truly feel that that is something that is an American thing? I do understand there is something about the country of America that makes it an exceptional kind of place where somebody can go there and create something that amazing. But it's like Elon Musk is South African by citizenship, and whatever's happening in South Africa was bad enough or in a situation enough that created him or his family to leave and go to the United States of America that is also more positive. So there are some aspects of there. I don't imagine that kind of situation could occur. It's not just having Florida that's in that location where it's convenient to have an actual ship land, because let's say America just didn't have any relationships with any other countries and it didn't have that location, then would you be okay? Like, let's say it landed in Chinese waters. Would the Chinese just be like, yeah, we're just going to give you back your pod? Would they give you the airspace? Despite the different problems that we've had with the United States of America has had between with United States of America, for some time they put those aside and they were working together with a spaceship. Now America has its own local kind of space program coming back and investments in that. Now that's kind of changing the dynamics of that. But do you feel that is something where it's like that is not part of your reality? That's not part of a human achievement. To me, I feel it's team human. And I could have the bias from having lived in the United States of America, but I think it's more of a global type of thing. Whereas the beauty industry, I don't necessarily feel too much like it's part of me. Like if women want to spend on that, and they clearly do, and other people who are attracted to women and the people who wear makeup have some kind of attraction to that, I know there might be some purpose or some uses for me to actually do it. If I go on TV or if I'm doing like films or things like that, I can understand why there might be some uses to it. There's also just the prosthetics and things like that. But anyway, so taking that aside, why do some people feel some things are like this is what we do, and some things like that's not us? With the space industry, if it was spent in this, 70 billion is a global government space exploration budget. Now, the United States of America probably spends more on space exploration than the next 20 countries combined, the next 25 countries combined. Now that is a similar thing. That is before the Space Force, but speaking of Space Force, that's a similar thing with the military. People say the United States of America, the amount of money they spend on the military is more than the next 25 countries combined. And I think that's the same thing in this. So would you be able to say, oh, America is a garbage country because they care so much about the war? Why are they spending so much on the military compared to other people? So are you saying because of that spending, showing America cares more about that, which makes them worse? If space is a positive thing, does it mean America is 25 times better than other countries because they're spending more on the space program as well? And I think the space program has more positive things to do in the world and you could argue that, okay, maybe that you're saying the amount of military spending and when they're selling all these weapons to all these other people, you can say, okay, that's like kind of, there's a lot worse things about the world with that. But I think the main thing I was trying to ask of this is, do you think there'll be a time when every country in the world will have an equivalent of a NASA? Will be able to spend the equivalent of what United States of America spends on exploration, on space exploration right now, have its own, like Kenya will have its Kenya space exploration. Tanzania will have Kenya space exploration. It's NASA. It's National Air and Space. Let me double check that. Yeah, I was close enough. National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Now, when you hear NASA, that's just national, but does this say it says zero United States in it? It's like NASA. I think like Space Force might be more specifically to the United States of America. But with this, do you think there's going to be a situation where all 100 and whatever countries in the world right now will have their own National Aeronautics and Space Administration? I think I remember seeing some old clip of some Kenyan that way back in the day had some kind of space program that was just completely garbage. It was a complete scam and things like this. It might have been Kenya, it might have been another country, but it was some crazy type of scam thing. But I just don't see a future where countries will be like America. There's going to be a situation where I think we're going to start letting go of these. It's going to be actual globalization where people realize we are team human. This is an Earth. This is a spaceship we're all on right now, and we need to come together. Instead of creating our new NASA type of thing, there's going to be something like SpaceX that's more private sector, that happens to be headquartered in a place that is more amenable to something like that coming in. And then the people in Kenya that will be interested in that will say, okay, let's go and work with SpaceX. Or SpaceX will come and establish somewhere in Kenya, and then there'll be some kind of relationships. There's other ones, like Boeing is working on one. There's other places that will start like this more private sector. When you're talking about space elevators, there's certain locations on the Earth that specifically would have to be used for those space elevators, where just physics-wise you can't create them in other places unless you develop some new kind of technology that I can't even think of right now. It's because of like Lagrange points and things like that with the gravity and the shapes of the Earth. Some of these things just say there's going to be one somewhere in Kenya, and there's going to be one, I forget where the other one is going to be. I want to find, this might just be, I'm snitching on myself, getting out these secrets, but I want to buy some land as close as possible to where that space elevator is going to be, and pass it down to my family members, if I happen to have family members or anything. But anyway, so that's it. This thought. Can you think of other times when people just mention some kind of spending, some other kind of spending, and then they say that spending means we care more about the thing that we spend more on, without coming into the actual details of why those things are actually related in any possible way, and if those things even have a practical sense of switching those spendings around, or are they just many other things to explain why the spending is the way it is. Okay, till next time, like, share, subscribe, links to merchandise store wherever you're reading this, or listening to this, wherever you listen to this. I guess you could be reading this. Somebody could be transcribing this with some kind of like, let me not be hearist, audioist. There might be some people who can't hear, who are deaf, and they're reading this with the closed captions. So yeah, if you're reading or hearing this, should be linked somewhere to a merchandise store where you can buy some merchandise and help spend some of that. Would that be beauty industry, or would that be aeronautics and space? Because there's planes and stuff flying some of these merchandise to you when you get them, depending where you get them from. Anyway, so that's it. Like, share, subscribe. Till next time. Goodbye.